we'll kick off. I'll hand over to Mighty Horden and Glenn Williams from DFAT for a much anticipated presentation. They've said they're happy to take questions throughout, so if you want to type your questions in, make sure they're not too exhaustive and too long, and they'll do their best to answer them throughout. And we'll probably run for an hour, probably a little bit over. We've changed the format of these webinars slightly, so there will be a survey monkey as you exit the webinar, so you don't have to send that out to you separately. If you could just fill that in quickly and then close out of the webinar, and then that's all in one place, and we can evaluate how we're doing. So with no further ado, I'll hand over to Mady and Glenn.
Thanks so much for introduction, Stephanie, and thanks again to ACFID for hosting this series of webinars for us and for you guys, and it's a pleasure to be able to speak to you all again. I've got Glenn Williams here with me today, who's our IT specialist and looks after ANCP online for us, and I know many of you have met Glenn before. So today we're going to move quickly through a few slides at the beginning of our presentation, and then Glenn's going to actually guide you through step by step the ADPlan forms that are in ANCP online. And we're going to talk about some of the information that you might like to include, or we recommend you include at each of those questions there in the ADPlan form. For those of you that have attended the face-to-face information sessions that we recently presented in Sydney and Melbourne, I guess today really is sort of an abridged version of those presentations and sessions that we did. Like Stephanie said, we're more than happy to take questions as we go through, so pop them in the text box and we will tap out a reply to you guys as we move through. Or of course, if you have any questions after the end of today, you can contact the ANCP team at DFAT at any time during business hours on 02 6178 5888 or at the ANCP mailbox, which is ancp@dfat.gov.au. I'll repeat those at the end of our presentation too. So to start off with, I've just got a few quick and boring PowerPoint presentation slides that we'll go through with just some of the key program developments that most of you probably should be familiar with by now. So the first one being our revised contractual arrangements that we're introducing for the ANCP for this new financial year onwards. So by now you should have hopefully received this information via correspondence that was sent out in relation to the new funding policy that included some of the details about these revised contractual arrangements, and also in the most recent ANCP bulletin that we sent out. So from the 1st of July onwards.
Just for the echo, if you've got your Steph, if you've got your speakers turned on, could you turn, sorry, if you've got your mic still turned on, can you turn that off? Otherwise it picks up the sound out of the speaker and feeds it through the mic and gives everyone an echo, as we've got our speakers turned off here. So I assume that's the problem.
Thank you. Sorry, I'll just jump on my Steph's looking at that with the contractual reforms. So for base accredited NGOs and the full tier accredited NGOs, from the 1st of July onwards, you guys will actually be contracted to the ANCP via a standard annual grant agreement. Those will be coming out to you this week. They're very similar to the funding orders that you will have been receiving in recent years, in that a lot of the contractual language is the same. There shouldn't be considerable difference. Those grant agreements will contain your annual grant figure in them. As I said, there are standard grant agreements. The front half of that document will have all of the standard DFAT contractual clauses, and then in the schedules at the back of that, it'll have the ANCP specific details included in there. This arrangement of having the annual grant agreement replacing the funding orders will also see a change in the head agreements that you are currently all a party to, and those head agreements will be phased out over the coming financial year. And from the 1st of July 2017 onwards, we're seeking to establish an ANCP specific partnership agreement, probably in the form of an MOU, and we're looking to discuss the content of that MOU with all of your organisations over the coming 12 months. So we look forward to having those discussions with you about what the partnership principles embodied in that MOU, or whatever form of agreement that takes, with you in the next 12 months, and we'll be starting those discussions sort of after ADPlan season in around August with you. For those NGOs that are receiving funding through other DFAT programs, you may be receiving that via a funding order that's linked to your current head agreement. So some assurance there that for the life of those funding orders, those funding orders remain current, and they will sit in relation underneath the head agreement, as there are clauses within the current head agreement that allow for the endurance of the head agreement even after it has been phased out, if there are any active funding orders sitting underneath that. But from here on forwards, it's likely that most program funding coming from DFAT will be issued using this standard annual grant agreement. Once you receive your annual grant agreement in the post, please don't hesitate to contact us if you had any questions about any of the content that you find in there. But this should hopefully be a far more streamlined and simplified approach for many of you than is the current arrangement. As with the head agreements and the lifespan that they had, we were finding that each year we needed to include a lot of revised contractual clauses in the funding orders for you, which meant that in order for you guys to have a clear picture of your contractual relationship with DFAT, you'd have to read your head agreement and multiple funding orders in order to have a full picture of our contractual relationship. So this should hopefully streamline that, so that you have one current grant agreement that you can refer to each year. One too many slides. So as I said, really, that in the annual grant agreement, you should see that most of the language in the clauses are similar to the current agreements that we have in place. However, there are just a couple of updated clauses that we wanted to highlight to you today, as this may have some bearing on what you include in your ad plans this year. So the first revision is some updates to the fraud clauses in the grant agreement. And I guess in summary here, it's just really clarifying that the conditions or the contractual obligations in relation to fraud do follow the funding. So as you have agreements with your in-country partners, and as they may have other agreements further down the stream with other implementing partners, those fraud and corruption clauses and anti-corruption clauses do need to follow the money as it moves down through multiple agreements. There's also a requirement in the new grant agreement that full tier NGOs need to have a fraud risk assessment and a zero tolerance fraud control strategy prepared as part of their contractual arrangements with DFAT. This is the same requirement that's one of the accreditation criteria for full tier NGOs. So this we're not requiring that you develop anything new or different to what you've already had to prepare and present to us as part of the accreditation process. But in any case, it is a requirement in the contracts, and the DFAT fraud control section is preparing some guidance on how you can prepare a good fraud control strategy, and that guidance will be up on the DFAT website soon. As soon as that's published, we will include those details in an ANCP bulletin. The next update, thanks for your question, Elizabeth, I'll come back to that in a minute. The next update is a requirement for NGOs to maintain an asset register, and you will see, if you're familiar and you've memorised, I'm sure you've all memorised the ANCP manual. It's got some information in it around the type of assets that around the type of assets that will or that can and can't be supported as part of your ADPlan submission. And we have had some questions from different NGOs as to what's a definition of an asset. And we will be including this in an update to the ANCP manual that we're going to be distributing shortly. But an asset is roughly defined as a sort of portable item that has a useful lifespan of more than 1 year and a value of over 2,000 Australian dollars. And you'll see that the grant agreement now requires that NGOs maintain an asset register for project assets that are for ANCP projects. And we're not expecting that you will have to submit asset registers or anything as part of your ADPlans. It's just to have that asset register available should the need arise, for example, as part of an audit or a fraud investigation or something, that those asset registers are maintained and available should they be required. And we expect that this is probably all part of the account keeping practice that you guys all have already anyway. And just a reminder, have a look in the manual at the moment. It does say that where the main purpose of a project or the bulk of the funding for a project is about the provision of equipment or freight or buildings, that in general we won't be able to support those ADPlans unless it's quite clear in the ADPlan that that those assets, or that the funding of those assets does have clear development links and clear purpose to the overall development activity that those assets are supporting. So I'm just going to respond to Elizabeth's question there. It says fraud assessment and control strategy required within 1 month of commencement. Is this 1 month of the contract signing or the activity commencement? Elizabeth, for full-tier NGOs, it's expected that fraud control strategy is something that you've already prepared already as part of your accreditation in order to address the accreditation criteria. So we're hopeful that you've already got your fraud control strategy in place, but in terms of those specifics, again, it's not something that we're requiring you to submit as part of your ADPlans, but I will go and check as to whether or not it's expected that that's a month from the contract or the activity commencement. So I'll come back to you on the specifics of that, but it's hopefully something you've put in place already. Okay, moving on to the next slide. I think hopefully by now we've advised all of you what your grant amount for 2016-17 will be. And we've also distributed plenty of correspondence in relation to the new ANCP funding policy. If you'd like the specific details you're seeing in this slide, there's the correspondence that was distributed on the 8th of April together with the funding policy, and then also earlier this month when we distributed the most recent ANCP bulletin, we included some additional information on the implementation of the funding policy. So just to clarify, I guess, the implementation of the funding policy, there are some NGOs, some full-tier NGOs that will be seeing an increase and a decrease, or a decrease in their funding amounts over the coming years. And we have looked at a gradual implementation or a gradual progression through to the full implementation of the funding policy in order to not disrupt the programming of NGOs, as we know that fluctuating grant amounts can really have a detrimental impact on effective programming. So you'll see on the slide here just some maximum grant decrease amount and maximum grant increase amounts over the coming 4 financial years. So this year in 16-17, it's that 5% movement either way, and really this year is that preparatory year. For those of you that know that we have had discussions with you, you will have that idea as to whether or not your grant amounts can be expected to increase or decrease over the coming 4 years. if we haven't had an individual discussion with you yet about your about where you're sort of sitting in relation to your organisation's recognised development expenditure, please do feel free to give the ANCP team a call if you wanted more information on it. But in general, you can see that we have phased these grant amounts over the next 4 years. This year, quite a small increase and decrease, and then over the next 3 forward years, those percentages sort of growing to be a larger increase or decrease. When you're having a look at each of these figures, we are talking about percentage change as compared to the previous year's grant amount. So, for example, if you are on a course for a steadily increasing grant amount, you might see a 5% increase in 16-17 as compared to your current grant. And then the 15% increase would be in a 15% amount increase in 17-18 as on top of the 5% increase that you had already received. So it's going to be 15% of your 16-17 grant amount, and so on and so forth. So it is a cumulative increase or decrease in those percentages. So if you have any other questions in relation to the funding policy, if you haven't had the opportunity to discuss it, your grant amounts in the future years with the ANCP team one-on-one, please feel free to give us a call, and we're happy to talk you through what the changes, you might be expecting for your organisation. Finally today, before Glenn launches into the meat of what you've all really come here to hear, I just wanted to go through some advice on revising and updating your ad plans after you've submitted the your initial ad plan on the 30th of June. And I'll just come to your question. Anne's just asked if we'll be supplied a copy of these slides. I know that there's a recording of this webinar that will be available on the ACFID website. And yes, and the recording available. And also the information that's in these slides has been included in the most recent ANCP bulletin that was sent earlier this month. So that's another place where you can gather this information in writing. So in relation to revising and updating your ad plans after their initial submission on the 30th of June, our message kind of to you is that now is the time in the lead up to the 30th of June to really be thinking about your ad plans and your project plans for the coming year. And now's the time to try and set down what your ANCP portfolio, if you like, is going to be for the coming year, and how you want to arrange those projects and the money that's spread across them. So we're not encouraging lots of frequent changes to your ad plans. Having said that, we know that there are circumstances that require you to have to go back and look at your project plans and adapt your projects to changing situations in the challenging environments that you face in the countries and sectors that you work in. So a good part of the correspondence that we probably have with all of you throughout the year is in relation to updating and amending your projects. And we do receive a lot of questions from you guys in relation to, this has happened in my project, do I need to tell you about this, yes or no? And in the current ANCP manual, there is a short section on revising and updating your ad plans. And we're just seeking to provide to you some additional clarification around that information that is already in the ANCP manual. So hopefully we're not introducing a new or revised system. We're just looking to provide some more clarity for you, to give you some guidance. In general, I guess our key message is that you guys know what constitutes a significant change to your project, and you have plenty of good experience and judgment to use when determining if you should raise project amendments with DFAT or not. But in order just to flesh out the scope a little bit, flesh out what the changes might be and what some thresholds might be for when you need to advise us, some key kind of thresholds that you might like to think about for you are major changes to project scope. So for example, if you're looking at changing the objectives of a project, or you're looking at totally changing the sector that you're focusing on as part of that project, or the corresponding DAT code that goes with that project, or if you're actually looking at totally changing your project activities. For example, if you had originally planned to deliver community education activities, but now you're transitioning your project to be a school-based education activity, then those are the type of changes to your scope that we would love to hear about at DFAT. In the ANCP manual already, it talks about budget changes greater than 20%, you know, plus or minus 20%, that DFAT would like to hear about those. And I guess here in terms of budget, we're looking where you might be changing the ANCP contribution to a project by plus or minus 20%, or if actually the total project budget is going to be increasing or decreasing by 20%. Correspondingly with beneficiary numbers, if you think your beneficiary numbers might move sort of, you know, more than 20% in either direction from your initial anticipated figures, then we'd love to hear about that. If you have new implementing partners, or if you're dropping some implementing partners for projects, we would love to hear about that. And then the next is timeframes. So if there's a delay in the proposed commencement date that is more than 3 months, or if you're looking to close a project more than 3 months, or 3 months earlier than the planned date, or obviously if you've just got a gap or some specific activities that are going to change, start 3 months later or finish 3 months earlier than originally anticipated, then we would love to hear about that. The next two dot points that I've got there in relation to location and new projects, I guess to jump back a little bit, when we look at your ADPlans and your new ADPlan submissions, we do go through a detailed process at DFAT of reviewing and considering those projects, including extensive consultation with our high commissions and embassies in those countries that you are proposing new projects for. So when you propose project amendments that include changes to location, including new countries, we do need to go through that detailed process that we go through when we look at new projects at the beginning of the year. So it may take a little bit of time for us to go back and forth with you and with our High Commission or Embassy to seek their input and support for certain projects. So because of this, we really do ask that after sort of the middle of December, around the 15th of December, we don't necessarily want to be going through that process of looking at new countries for projects to be delivered in, or brand new projects either. And this really is because as we go through that liaison process with you, there's already a requirement in the ANCP manual. You'll see that you don't commence new project activities with ANCP funding until you've received that approval from DFAT. So after that sort of middle of December and moving into the Christmas and January period, it may be a number of months before you're even able to start those new projects or start working in those new countries. And then I guess there's the how much value is there in starting those new countries and new projects with such a short amount of time left in the new financial year. So I guess our message here is really new projects and new countries. Please, if that's something you're considering now in ADPlan submission, 30th of June, that's the time to be putting it forward to us. And then if needs be, and you really do need to amend your projects significantly by having new projects or new countries, then after the 15th of December, we really won't be in a position to consider those applications. One thing we're asking you to consider when you do contact us in relation to amending your ADPlans is that if you are making a change to one of these aspects of your project, for example, you've got a new implementing partner is really when you're advising us is to consider that overall impact on your project that new implementing partner, for example, may be having. If you're changing implementing partners, what's changing in your project scope? What might be changing in your beneficiary numbers that comes as, that falls out from changing implementing partners? Have a think across the project, the impact, and advise us of all that information so that we can make we can give detailed consideration to approving that change to your project. And to that end, in the recent ANCP bulletin that we sent out, we did include a template that just has these thresholds you see across the top, and we just ask that when you're seeking to make a change to the project, you actually submit the changed project information to us in that template, and that will hopefully cut down on the correspondence that we frequently have back and forth with you all when you're looking to change your project. So hopefully that's just a process that speeds it up for all of us. Of course, if you've got any questions at any time in relation to amending your projects and you're just not sure what we need to do or what we need to discuss, please just call the ANCP team and we're happy to discuss that with you at any time. So that just concludes the formal part of going through the slides. And I'm just going to hand over to Glenn now, who's really going to talk through ANCP Online and take you through the online forms for ADPlans.
Yeah, thanks, Mighty. Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me quite clearly. All right, we're just going to, I'm going to share my screen here so we can actually bring up the system so we're all looking at the same thing. Okay, hopefully you can see my logon screen. All right, what we're going to do is just start off with, this is the screen you see when you come into ANCP for this year. Make sure you enter in, you would have been supplied the URL up the top here, ancp.smartygrants.com.au/ANCP, then 2016_17. If you put that in, you'll go directly to this round and you'll only see this data. But if you just enter in ancp.smartygrants.com.au, you'll still see the data anyway, but you'll also see previous years. Okay, from this screen, I recommend, I've changed the font size. As you see the login button, the text here is nice and large. So always go for the large text first, okay? So what happens if you accidentally click on the start a submission here, it will get you to log in and then it will create a new header for your program, even though you've already got one. So always go for the large text first. So we're going to click our login. It should bring up the login screen. Scroll down a little bit and then enter in the login details. Okay, once you've entered this in, you should be able to just click login, which is just below it. Don't save the password. And it'll bring you to this screen. Right at the top here, as I said, the large text has My Submissions or Log Out. You click on My Submissions and it takes you through to your migrated ADPlan for the year. Just before we roll into this, at the moment I can't see any of your questions if I'm in this sharing a screen with you. So I will. You're quite happy to type those questions, but at intervals I'll go back and have a look, make sure that you haven't written any questions related after each form, just to make life a little bit easier for us. So on the Your Submissions screen here, right up the top here, you can see migrated data, ANCP 2016-17 dash, and then it will have your header number there. You can see I've submitted quite lately, so I've got a large number. So to look at a header, you can just click on the show, which is right next to the ANCP 2016-17, and it will display the high-level details of my ADPlan. Okay, first up is our header, and we're going to progress through that. So you can now see my header here. It's called ANCP ADPlan Header 2016-17. And you just click either the name or the little box here, which looks like a little form. And it will open up the form for you. Okay, before we get into the form, I'll just run through navigation. It's the same on every form. Right up the top, we have Save Progress, which means if you're typing away and someone comes and interrupts you or you need to go for a copy, hit Save Progress, because after 30 minutes being a web form, it will log out. You won't notice it on the screen, but when you come back and hit Save, it will return you back to the My Submission page. And if you didn't hit Save Progress, you'll have lost that data. Okay. You can, of course, hit Save and Close, and it will return you back to My Submissions or Next page. The next page will just move you on throughout the form. And after you've gone one page, you also get a Previous Page button up the top. By clicking either of the previous page or the next page, it will also save your application. So if you're going through adding a little bit of content, moving on to the next page, you don't have to keep hitting Save Progress because it automatically saves. Okay, organization details. So I'm going to brush over the stuff that's always been there. It shouldn't be any issue. So organization name, it's possibly migrated, I would say, for you guys. Then you've got accreditation type, base, full, or partner at the moment. Enter in a valid ABN. If I enter in just any number here and hit lookup, it refreshes the page and then comes up, tells me that was not a valid ABN number. Okay, so make sure you enter in and make sure it is your company name once you've entered in that ABN. You don't want to be submitting on someone else's behalf. And it's the usual details. Postal address is a mandatory field. Then you have street address, business phone number, and website is mandatory for the company. Okay. Then down the bottom we also have navigation. You can just hit next page. At any time on the right hand panel here we can skip to any pages. Maybe you're just responsible for doing the funding. You can just select the page, click it, and it will take you straight through to that page. But we're going to go one page at a time, just to drag it out for you. Okay, next page, important details. These are the people we'd like to talk to. First of all, we have your head of the NGO, all mandatory fields here, name, position, phone, and email. Next, we have executive assistant. Some companies don't have executive assistants, so just put your second in charge, that's okay. Of course, name, phone, position, phone, and email. And then authorizing officer. This is a new section. It originally used to be collected before we went online. So we would like to know who you class as an authorizing officer. So once you've signed your ad plan, they'll sign the form at the end, and also performance reports. So the person should exist in this list. So you can add as many people here that is authorizing officer for your NGO. You just hit the add more button just over here on the right, or you can hit the little blue plus, it'll do the same function. You can add as many people as you like. Okay, and all we need is a name and their position. Next is ANCP Contact 1, mandatory fields again, position, phone, email, and then if you've got a secondary contact, in case that person does lots of travel, you can add in a secondary person. Then if you've got a monitoring evaluation contact and finance contact, these are not mandatory, but very important, child protection officer is also mandatory down the bottom. Name, position, phone, email again. Okay, quite often for smaller NGOs you'll repeat the same name often in quite a few fields. That's okay. It's just when we're looking for a particular position, we'd like to target that person.
Just a reminder with your contacts fields is that this is, we rely on this information to get in contact with you guys all the time, and it is your responsibility to keep these contact details up to date. When you advise us that there are staff changeovers in your organisation, we can't automatically jump in and update these contacts for you. But if you do have staff moving on, let us know. We'll open up this header form for you in Smarty Grants so that you can go in and amend your contact details to let us have those new details.
Okay, next page. So we should be on page 3. Page 4, there we go, we're zooming through. Executive summary, overarching development approach. Most thing you'll see this year in the change in the forms, we've put in better examples of what we expect to see in the forms, in the questions. Okay, often there's some that are the same question over and over, but we've now updated the example or put in some few dot points that you need to hit to really deliver on the question that's asked. Okay, the first one, but doesn't have any changes, is an overarching development approach. If you're new to the process, make sure you read the descriptions up the top here. They're there to help you complete the questions. And also attachments. You can attach additional information for your overarching development approach to clarify what you've written in the section above. Capacity building. It's the same as last year. How are you building capacity in the country? As you notice, responses should be specific for this ADPlan period and not restating the approach overall, as you would have in your accreditation. Inclusive development and safeguards. Okay, this is the first change that you'll come across. Originally, this was a single field with 300 words. We've now broken it up. Inclusive development and cross-cutting issues is the first section, and then approach to safeguards below. Okay, so and they've both got 300 words, so plenty of words for you to let us know around this section. As you notice, this section should not restate existing policies, but should explain how these cross-cutting issues will be applied when implementing activities during this ADPlan period. So make sure, if this data has already been migrated, make sure you reread it, make sure it still applies to your current year. All right. And down in innovation, this is a non-mandatory section, but the government at the moment is very keen on, if you're doing something innovative and how you're doing it, add in some detail around which project you are implementing your new innovation, or maybe it's right across the board. You're just you've changed the way you deliver projects, anything like that. So let us know. We're keen to hear anything new to the ADPlan. And also down the bottom, we've also added an attachment. So you can add additional information if 600 words really doesn't cut enough information for you. And at the bottom of this page, same as last year, is your design, monitoring and evaluation program. Okay. Moving forward. Expected beneficiaries. This page is designed just purely to calculate all your beneficiaries that you've added into your projects and then display them in the header. So when your boss is reading through, he only has to read the header. He knows exactly how many people you're helping in the world. Okay. The biggest change here in beneficiaries across our ADPlan is we removed indirect beneficiaries. Okay. We initially were collecting this, but we found that we weren't using the data, and since we don't use the data, we don't expect you guys to collect the data as well. So we only ask you to report on your expected beneficiaries for this ADPlan period. And as you scroll down, it's the same, disaggregated as well, of course, auto-calculating. You can see mine has an error because I haven't added any values into my project yet. So once I add values into my project, I come back here and it will have filled out these values for me. Same as before, expected urban and rural down the bottom, totaling it up, and then Indigenous peoples, which is also collected in the projects now.
We've had a lot of questions from people around the Indigenous peoples and the figures there. You'll find in the Indigenous peoples strategy on the DFAT website, if you just even type in the word Indigenous in the search function on the DFAT website, you'll find that strategy, and that includes a definition of what's considered Indigenous peoples, and it does include ethnic minorities in that definition. So please have a read of that definition in that strategy, and then if you've still got any questions, just drop us a line.
There's also a link in the project that you can go directly from the Indigenous
line.
There's also a link in the project that you can go directly from the Indigenous people section to that strategy as well. Okay, Next is the total funding to the NGO. This hasn't changed whatsoever. It's asking what in the previous ADPlan period, so in other words 15-16, the one we're just finishing up, what was your revenue for international development, and then for revenue for this following 16-17 period, we want to know what you expect to receive in revenue. Of course, there's a bit of a guess as well, you know, like of course we haven't got into that ADPlan period yet, but we're just like a bit of an idea of how you expect to travel through the next financial year. Okay, then the budget summary hasn't changed from previous years. First section is income, rolled over funds, ANCP funds that is, interest rolled over from the previous year, the actual ANCP grant, and the estimated interest you'll earn this year off that grant money while it sits in your bank. And then of course it totals it up automatically for you.
Just a reminder that under your current contract and the ANCP manual, that if your NGO is seeking to roll over more than 10% of your 15-16 grant amount into the 16-17 financial year, you do need prior written approval from DFAT to roll more than 10% over. So please get in contact with us if you haven't done so already, if that is an anticipated situation for your NGO.
Okay, then we come down to expenditure. Of course, a lot of this is calculated directly from your projects. So you've got your grant money spent on your projects, total rollover that was spent on particular projects. It auto sums across all your projects and then adds it here. Estimated interest on those projects, and then your administration up to 10%. On the right hand side here you've got administration validation, so it makes sure that you don't add more than that value, more than 10%. Otherwise it won't let you submit the form. And then it totals it up down the bottom here, totals up expenditure. This total must equal the income up the top here for ANCP funds, and it'll display a 0 over here on the validation. If it doesn't have a 0, you need to check in sums because it won't let you submit the form through to us. Down below that, we have design, monitoring, and evaluation. Of course, it just sums that up off your projects. And then also, you're not allowed to exceed 10% for your DME. So it also has a validation there, same as last year. And then NGO contribution. It sums up all the NGO contribution that you've added on your projects, and then also ensures that it's at least 20% over here on the side. It used to say 5-to-1, and that was a bit confusing because really that wasn't 20%. We went back and checked out the actual what the original agreement was, and it's actually 20% match. So we've made it 20% instead of 5-to-1 or 4-to-1 or whatever you want to say. I'm just going straight to the percentage. So it'll come up and say 20 or greater in this validation field, and you'll know you're right to submit it. Okay. Don't forget, write your questions. I'll go check the questions as soon as I finish this form. All right. On the next. Okay. Meta evaluations. We've added in a lot more detail around what we expect as a meta evaluation. And will there be, this is just asking, will there be any meta evaluations this year? The first question. Okay, meta evaluation can be valued in a development approach that goes across multiple projects or covers an entire program. If you just get individual project evaluations, that's captured on the project itself. But something that's greater than an individual project evaluation, we want to see it here, that you expect to do in the next financial year. Okay, so if you don't expect to do any, you just leave this as no. And then you can move through. You can see below here, everything's grayed out. You don't have to enter any detail. But if I've got a meta evaluation happening this year, make sure you tick yes. And then scroll down, and it asks what country or region that you plan to do that meta evaluation in, and what theme it's on, etc. Projects, all the projects that you're hitting, or program in particular, and the same details. Scroll right through, fill out the details, everything that's mandatory. If you've got more than one, Down the bottom, we've got an Add More button. So you can click on that and add another meta evaluation if required. Next page. Okay, last but not least, ANCP program certification. Okay, come in here. There's a little link here, certified template. Click on that. It will open up a Word document for you. Print it off, hand it to your authorizing officer, which is listed at the beginning of the form. Get them to sign it, tick all the boxes, make sure you tick all the boxes, otherwise we'll be sending it back to you. And then scan it back in and attach it. Just here on the attachment, and then just state below here who the actual officer is and when they signed it. Okay, the big thing you'll notice is missing out of the ADPlan header this year is the indicators. What we've done is move them to the project themselves. Okay, we don't expect you to fill out all the indicators like you do in a performance report. It's just pretty much give us an idea of what you plan to report against in the performance report at the project level. The reason we've done that is we wouldn't, even though we glance at the header indicators that you'd put in here, we weren't using the data. So once again, if we're not using the data, we don't expect you guys to spend a lot of effort in giving us and supplying that data. So we've made it simpler and moved it down to the project. Okay, I'm just going to flick back to view my questions section. Just notice the slides should pop back up, and I can see a couple of questions here. Okay, down the bottom here.
No questions.
No questions. Oh, hang on, I think Elizabeth is typing something maybe. I hope you guys haven't got a bad echo. It's,
Looks like it's been fixed.
yeah. If you've got your microphone turned on and you're getting speakers, you could get a bit of a rebound.
So yeah, the requirement for a 20% contribution is still the same. If you've managed in previous years to have a 17% contribution approved, then that is surprising to us, but it is a 20% match. That 20% match is across all projects though. So if you, for example, had a grant of $1 million, we would then expect to see that you are matching, that you're putting $200,000 of cash towards your ANCP portfolio. So you might take your $200,000 contribution and put that all against one individual project, or you might have a spread of that cash across multiple projects. But yes, it must be a 20% co-contribution in cash. And as Glenn pointed out, the form will force you, it won't let you submit it if that figure is less than 20%. If your matching contribution figure is less than 20%, it won't let you submit the form. I'm just gonna come back really quickly to the question that we had before too about the fraud control strategy and whether that needed to be in place within 1 month of signing of the contract or 1 month of the start of the project date. And my wonderful colleagues in the ANCP team have let me have checked the document, and it's within 1 month of the signing of the contract date. Just to come back to that earlier question.
Okay. Question 2, yes, Elizabeth? It didn't migrate at all, or it just didn't migrate some of the data? I didn't migrate the contact details this year. But if it's got no information in there whatsoever, yes, you can just cut and paste from the PDF of the previous year. It will allow you to just highlight that and put it in and then update it to suit this new financial year. Which organisation are you with, Elizabeth?
Fred.
Fred? Okay.
We might have to take a look into that when we're back in the
Great.
office.
Yeah, yeah, I can have a look in the office once I get back in. I'll have make sure your data's there. Okay, I'm going to move back onto the program. It's going to be fairly simple. programs, there's no changes, so I'm just going to step through how you create a new program onto the your ADPlan structure, and then I'll move straight onto the project, and then we'll go through that, and then we'll come back for more questions. Does that suit? I'll take that as a yes. Okay, as you can see, hopefully my screen has refreshed for you. We're still at the end of the header. After all the details are filled in, or you need more detail, of course you can just save and close. But if you finished it and you finished all your programs and projects, you would click on Review, and it brings you to a page that allows you to either look at it and submit it. But you can see my Submit button is grayed out, and if you get this, you'll also have this red banner directly underneath the buttons telling you that some of the changes are still required and you need to update them and correct them before you can submit the forms. So make sure all your forms have the Submit button ungrayed and don't have this red banner before you begin your submission of all your forms. Okay, so I click on my Close and it returns me back to my submissions. From here, when I look at my ADPlan, which is sitting in this box here, you can see I've got two programs sitting here, which has my header number and then two dashes and then the new program number. One's called Glenn's Wash and the other one's just a wash. So from here, directly underneath this, you can see a hyperlink that says add a new program. If I all of a sudden had an education program that I need to run as well, you can just click this add program. It will create a new ID number. I'll demonstrate that. Click new program. Gives me a new ID number for my new program. I step through, go next, and it brings up my program page. Okay, so this is the program form. We haven't changed anything here. It just gives you a warning up the top here. Don't forget, save every 30 minutes, otherwise you'll lose your data. We've got that warning on all the forms. The first question it asks, are you using a program approach for the projects that are going to sit below this program? If you say no, then the form's finished. I go to the next page and everything is grayed out. Nothing's applicable here. I could just go off and submit it. But as I've stated before, we've got an education program I'd like to run. So I go yes. You can save the progress, or you can just go to next page, which also saves your progress. And make sure you say what it is. You can then select what country, one or many countries, or down the bottom of the list as always. Let me scroll right down the bottom. We have our regions. So I'm doing an education program in my Pacific region, or in the Pacific region, not mine specifically. I haven't owned it yet. And then we expect you to add a description and a program outcomes related for all your program. But remember, if you don't have any specific program that you'd like to run, this can be all grayed out. Okay. And of course, the next page is your review and submit. And once again, I haven't filled out all the details. It has my red warning here. Okay. And if I go close, now when you get back to this page, I know the web's a little bit slower to refresh. You can now see I have 3 programs. Okay. To view what sits under each program, you just click on the show. And it will now show I can go back and edit my program, similar to the header above. And I can also see the 3 projects that I've added in underneath Glenn's Wash program. So we're going to go check out Glenn's awesome project number 1. Okay, once again, you click on the show and it shows you the actual project that you want to hyperlink. The whole point of we've got it collapsing here on the side is if you've got 20 projects, it gets pretty unwieldy. So you want to, you can collapse and show whatever you like. And when you log off and log back on next time, it leaves it exactly as you left it. Okay, so you can come straight back to that project. But of course, if you've got someone else using your same log on, they'll come in and change it all and you'll wonder why it changed. All right, let's go and have a look at this project. Same thing, click on the hyperlink or the project icon. First page, you notice once again it's got my header ID, my program ID, 2 dashes, and then my project ID. You're sending this information to me and say, hey Glenn, I need you to do something with this project. Make sure you copy the entire number and also the name if you'd like to see the name as well. Copy, paste it in an email, send it to me, and then ask me to do some details. Sometimes you need to, this project might be migrated from last year, but it has ended. So for 16, 17, it's no longer running. Send me the link and ask me to remove it, and I'll remove it from your ADPlan structure. Okay, stepping through the form, once again, so brief details on the project here. Please note we've now bolded this little sentence. It was always here, we just made it bold this year. And it's related to our project transparency. Earlier this year we went out to everybody and said, hey, we'd like to display these details related to our projects, past and present, onto our website, which we now have done. And this is just letting you know up front that we'll be doing a similar thing moving forward for transparency. Any sensitive information, ensure that it doesn't exist in the name of the project or the project brief description, but otherwise that's about all we really display. All right, and down the bottom is my usual warning, 30 minutes. All right, navigating through, next page. Okay, project summary. Right up the top, the project name that I've entered in here, you can see it sitting there, and it also, once you've entered and saved a project, it also gets displayed on your front page. Okay, the biggest change here, after Mighty corrects my spelling here, puts a bit of punctuation in, you notice directly below this, it must be no more than 10 words. Okay, this is a new change this year, especially after last year when I went in and looked at a project and it had 4 lines written across the screen. The project name was that long. I think it was longer than their project brief. So we just want to cut that down, so it just tells me that it's Glenn's project. You can see up here we've got a new example. For example, the X project in Indonesia or X project in PNG. So we've got Glenn's project 1, you should say in India, for example. Okay, nice and simple, 6 words, bang, done. Okay, gives you a full description of exactly what project you're looking at, what it's doing, but it's not telling us an entire story in a single line. All right, project brief gives you a few more words, 40 words. Keep it distinct, just who, what, when, where, and how. What if someone asked you what the project is about in 2 sentences, tell me exactly what you're delivering. Okay, something nice and sharp. I'm delivering a wash program in India for the such and such region or whatever. Okay, remember sensitivity. If it's a, for example, some gender projects are quite sensitive. Don't put in the name of the village and the street in the project brief. Keep it nice and high level and just state the general description of the project. Okay, moving down, these are the usual details. Start and end of the project. The actual start of the project, if it was prior to ANCP, that's fine. Just tell us when you actually started your project and when you expect it to end. You can see I'm expecting to end my awesome project in 2019. Okay, and down here we clarify around the ANCP funding. Was the project funded last year? We use this as a guide to see if it's a new project or not. If you say, yes, it was funded last year, we already know that we've been out to post, and as long as it doesn't sit in a high-risk area or it's a theme that's we need to go back out to post, we don't need to send that back out and get approval again. But if it's brand new, we'd like to get it out there to post to let them know what's happening in their area. Okay, simple yes, no drop down. Project scope. Okay, is there any major changes in the scope of your project we should be aware of? Okay, if I've said no, the section below is grayed out. Okay, the project is just running as it has previously. It's moved into a new year. But if you've got a major scope change in your project, say yes and let us know what that scope of that project is, what it's going to be.
If you're wondering here about what a good threshold might be in terms of has it significantly changed from the year before or not, those project variation thresholds that we talked about earlier, that might be a good guide to sort of use here in determining if there's been a significant change.
Okay. Previous project operations. Was it operating prior to ANCP? If you say yes, it's going to pop up a little box down here, provide some details. You know, it might have been running for the last 5 years or something. If not, you can just leave it as no, graze out that section, and then you can move on. Okay, first real change on this page itself. We've grabbed the DAC codes and the sector focus that used to be hanging out with the funding, who knows why, and moved them up into actually project details. And also from our webinars and face-to-face meetings last year, we realized that our descriptions for our DAC codes had dropped off. And that was really evident when we looked at the DAC codes and someone was talking about they were providing a wash project or a solar panel project, and they'd actually tick nuclear power. You know, that's a slight variation in the DAC code, but I don't blame you. I mean, we've got about 1,000 DAC codes running down here with various descriptions. So now we've added the description in there, making it nice and easy for you to ensure that you tick the correct one. And then secondary and tertiary as well also have the description. Okay, sector focus. Same as previous years, but this year, as you can see sitting there, I'm not sure why, eye health is highlighted in the field already. And what we had previously was health otherwise unspecified in brackets, e.g. eye health. Well, eye health is quite a prevalent requirement in some of our projects. So we've broken that out and made it its own sector focus, is eye health. And then all other health otherwise unspecified projects will still tick that. Okay, but that's the only change with your sectors. Then country, primary country. Pick your primary country here and its province. Of course, if your project runs over a region, scroll down to the bottom of your list and pick which region it sits in. Okay, but if you pick a region here, you can say not nil over here for actual region, primary region, because we've picked an actual group of countries. Come down, ask whether it works across borders or not. Okay, which, for example, the Thai-Myanmar border, you're walking right on the edge with the refugees, then you'd say yes here. But otherwise, if it's situated in 2 countries that are separate, you would just say no, and then you move down here. Most importantly, if I've selected a region up the top here, you must list all your countries. Or if I've selected a primary country up the top here, let's just use Vietnam for example, but it also works in other countries. You need to list them all here, including the primary country. Why is that? Okay, there's 2 changes to this table this year. We get quite a bit of pushback from our posts to work out how much funding is being spent in their relevant country. And of course, previously, we weren't able to tell them, you know, it's a $100,000 project working in these 5 countries. And so, you know, we could do the maths and divide it out equally, but often it's not. So what we've done this year is when you list country in here, still you've got the province and region for that country, but also how much funding of the ANCP funding for that country, and then expected beneficiaries for that country. Okay, so potentially for 100,000, I've got $10,000 spent in Bangladesh, helping 300 people, and I've got $90,000 in Vietnam, which is my primary country as well, helping 3,000 people, for example. Okay, so it gives us totals down the bottom, and they also have some validation related to here. This is new to this form this year, so please feedback if this validation seems to sit in the wrong spot for you to refer back to or not. But it looks at the ANCP funding and also the expected beneficiaries numbers. Okay. All right. And then below, implementing country partners, we've just added in partner type next to it. we gathered this list from you guys last year, and we've added in 3 new values: education, health, and local NGO. Okay, though from everyone was ticking other and then writing in these 3 quite commonly, so I've boiled them all up. Education refers to schools, universities, any type of training. Health is hospitals and medical centres or something similar. And then local NGO just makes sense, you know, who you're working with, the local partner. I don't know why we didn't have that in there before. And then just list as many as you got. Okay, these are your implementing partners here. And then project locations. As we had last year, we've got our map. You can surf the world. Zoom right back out on this example. Of course, you can zoom in. It's Google Maps, so you zoom in, drop the pin, or write the project location up the top here, and you're right to roll. People have come back and said this year in our previous meetings that they'd like to type in the latitude and longitude. That's what they collect. We've gone ahead and looked at the development of that, and we should hopefully roll that out for next ADPlan period. So next year you should be able to just type in the latitude and longitude. But if you do that, make sure even missing it by 1 number might put you in Pakistan instead of India. So just make sure the red pin is in the right location when you do that. Okay. And it's just my project location, and you can add as many as you like. Down the bottom there's an add more. You just keep on. Your project is in a country, but it's in 5 separate areas. Please locate, put a location for all those 5 areas. But if you've got 5 project locations within a kilometre of each other, just drop 1 pin. We'll be just fine. Okay. Next. Project information. This is where you get to write more detail around your project description. Still has 600 words, but you'll notice our project description now has some clear defined dot points up the top here. Make sure you have a look at those and make sure you hit each one of those. Make it nice and easy, distinct wording, so it describes that project completely.
One of our requests here this year is to really focus a bit of attention onto this project description, and I guess also the next section of expected outcomes. Please really ensure that it's clear to us laymen in DFAT who are reading your project proposals exactly what it is that you're doing and trying to achieve. Often when we read these project descriptions, we need to read through it 4 or 5 times before we kind of have to make an assumption as to what it is you're trying to do. So please just be clear about what it is you're trying to do. Try not to use jargon that's specific to your sector or specific to your organisation that we might not understand. We use this information constantly, have discussions with our posts or with our ministers' offices about what it is that you're working to do. Please also have a check that if your in-country partners are writing these project descriptions, that you just go through and really tighten up any of the translation if it needs it before you submit this form. This really is, we rely on this information so much, so please make this easy to understand for us.
Okay. Expected outcomes, as it was previously, but we have put a new example in here up the top here. It should include a description of the benchmarks and targets for the life of the project, but also what you expect to achieve this year as well. For example, increased X to X households eating 3 meals a day. And there's a few other examples there. So what you expect in the lifetime of the project for its outcomes, but also what you expect to achieve this financial year if it's a multi-year project. Okay. Government policies and programs, it was in last year, I believe. We've added a bit more clarification wording. So, does your project align with the host government's policies or programs? Yes or no? Just let us know. Yes or no, give us some reasoning below. And then the next question that used to stand without any explanation is, does the project complement DFAT bilateral or regional programs? And the key word here is complement, okay? Does it complement the bilateral programs? So the most ANCP projects must align with the aid program's overarching goals, but not required to align with the DFAT bilateral regional programs. Okay, so we just like to know, does it complement the existing policies? And if yes, how? And if no, why not?
This is one of the questions we receive a lot of questions from NGOs about, and we've received a lot of questions in our face-to-face information sessions here. If you haven't already done so, for those countries that you're working in, we can just really strongly recommend that you read the aid investment plans that are all available on the DFAT website for each of those countries that you're working on. And I guess here we really are expecting to see that the answer here is yes, that your project does complement the DFAT bilateral and regional programs running in that country. So we don't mean duplicate, we don't mean 100% aligned to. It's really that we're looking to see that ANCP projects aren't contradictory to the DFAT's broader strategies for working in those countries. So as Glenn said, the key word here really is complement.
Yeah, we did some analysis on last year's, to give you an example, and we hit 4 key countries in Asia, and 2 of them were 100%. All the NGOs that worked in there were aligned anyway. So, and another country was 78%. So, very high level anyway already of aligning with the programs. But the other ones that weren't projects that weren't aligned, they definitely complemented. So, you guys are pretty much doing it anyway. Sustainability. How's this project going to be sustained after you leave? Okay, pretty important that any projects that you guys do needs to be sustainable after you finish funding it. Okay, so just let us know how it's going to survive. Private sector development, question that came in last year. We've added in a few more yes/no questions just here at the top. The first 2 existed already. Does the project engage with the private sector in design, delivery and evaluation? And does the project support private sector development and growth? And the 2 new ones here are, does the project involve engagement with representative organisations, peak bodies, Chamber of Commerce, other business groups in the design, delivery and management? And the second one is individual businesses. Same question, but around individual businesses. If you answer yes to any of those ones above, please provide further information. Simple as that. If you answer no to all those, that's okay, move on. Gender equality, similar to last year. How's the activity address gender equality? Principal, significant, not targeted. And then specify that focus via one or many tick boxes here below. And a new piece to this is, was gender analysis undertaken during the design of the project? Yes or no? If you say yes, give details. If you say no, maybe you're not targeting, it's not focused on gender, it grays out this question below it.
We've included this question following on from the recent ANCP Gender Thematic Review that was undertaken and published back in March of this year. You can read that on the ANCP webpage if you haven't had a chance to do so. We've distributed it out to you all as well. But really, we've included this question just because a number of NGOs that participated in that thematic review were identifying to us that they'd done this great gender analysis work during the design of the project, but had said, but there's nowhere for us to record this great work that we've done in our ad plans. So we've included this question.
Okay. Disability inclusion is similar. Oops. Supposedly my battery's running low. One moment, we'll just check the power. Make sure it's actually turned on the wall. We'll soon find out. If we cut out completely, Mighty is to blame.
Thanks, Glenn.
Same as last year. Activity addressing accessibility for people with disability. Principal, significant, not targeted. And then specify the focus of the activity. And then similar to gender, they've added in a similar question: was disability inclusive development analysis undertaken during the design? If you say yes, please provide more details around the analysis. If no, it grays that section out and you can move on. And then as mentioned previously, our Indigenous peoples section, It does have the link to the policy. Go have a read of that first. And does the project involve participation and or impact upon Indigenous peoples and or ethnic minorities? And once again, yes or no. If you say yes, please answer the question below. If you state no, it will grey that section out. Okay, so have a look at that policy to get an understanding. And then project risks, very important. We'd like to know exactly what project risks you expect to have and how you're going to mitigate these risks or challenges, okay, to ensure the safety of project staff. Okay, so maybe dot points. We don't have a lot of words. You've got 300, so some dot points on what the risk is, and then dash, and then say how you expect to mitigate it. If you've got a lot of risks, especially in a high-risk country, you tend to get quite a few listed. Otherwise, just let us know in your 300 words what risks and what mitigation you plan to apply for this project.
When we put out your new project proposals to our posts or to our thematic areas that are assisting us with the review, one of the main areas that we get questions back, questions and comments and feedback going back to you is around this risk management section. So please think about this section carefully, and as Glenn said, it's really essential that you not only identify all of the risks or all of the key risks, but that you're also detailing the mitigation strategies that you're going to be putting in place. If you need more to add more than your 300 words allows here in this section, you can always attach a separate document, and Glenn will show you where to do that towards the end of the form in the other information. Other information.
All right. It doesn't look like our PowerPoint has got power to it, so just give us a moment. If we get another warning at 10%, we'll look for another PowerPoint. We're sitting away from the office at the moment.
Should be fine then, close.
All right, beneficiaries. Okay, once again, as I stated before, we've got rid of indirect bennies because we weren't using the data. So targeting exactly what we've been using is your beneficiaries. Of course, you've got your baseline, where you started before the project. Often could be 0 or could be, the number of the village. Your expected number, how many you expect to assist this financial year or this ADPlan period. And then target over the life of the project, how many beneficiaries you expect to hit. And then disaggregated, men, women, boys and girls, men with disability, women, boys, girls with disability, and all 8 of those will add it up to the total. So if you've got 100 men, 10 have disability, it would be 90 here, and 10 down here. That was my power warning again. And it would, when I tab out of that field, it gives me the 100 down here, direct. Okay, same as before, urban and rural needs to be split up whatever there is, but the total here must equal the direct total above. And then, of course, it gives you validation. As you can see, I've got 100 there, it needs to equal 0. So if I put in 50, tab 50, I tab out of that, it comes and makes my validation 0. Indigenous people, how many of these numbers are Indigenous? This is just the total value that gets added up. Oh, we're just going to move our computer to something that's got power. Just give us 1 second.
Keep talking, Glenn, while we move.
I can probably talk and walk at the same time. Okay, in the section below our Indigenous peoples are the family planning. Okay, there's some new clarification related to this. Just placing the computer back down. All right, see directly above there, it's related to, I've got to find it myself.
Indigenous peoples.
Okay, family planning. As I said before, if it's related, this project related to family planning, if you say no, the sections below are grayed out. And if you've said yes, of course they're active for you to fill in. Okay, moving forward. Next page. Funding. Okay, no changes here from previous years, or from last year at least. We still have our ANCP grant allocated to this project, our rolled over allocated to this project. This is ANCP grant money rolled over from the previous year. An estimated interest from ANCP funds allocated to this project gives us a total. Remember, these three values are added up into the header automatically for you. And then what amount of the ANCP grant is actually being spent on DME for this project? Add the value in here. Total across all your projects, the DME must be 10% or less, but you might be spending 20% on this project and 3% on another project. So it can vary across projects. As you ramp up, you've got a lot of DME initially, and then it'll slide off as the project gets running. And then your NGO contribution. Okay, that's also calculated across all your projects and added up into your header. Okay, the next section, project funding from other sources. These other sources are people that are contributing money towards your project, potentially another international NGO or a large company that changes what you can deliver, really. So if I've said no, there's no other funding from other sources, that's okay, the section's grayed out. If we said yes, we want to know how much funding is being provided. For example, if you're on a $100,000 project, but you're also getting $1 million from an international NGO, we'd like to know about that, because then our ANCP contribution to that project is a lot smaller than it being a standalone project on ANCP money. Give it the donor name, and then what type of donor partner type it is here. Okay, if you've got more than one, you can add more in here. Just click on the add more and it'll put a new line. It'll refresh the page and add a new line in there for you so you can update it. Okay, next page. Okay, evaluations. As I said, these are project-specific evaluations. Will there be an evaluation undertaken on this project this year? Yes or no? If you state yes, all the evaluation fields below are available for you to fill out and mandatory. If you say no, they will be grayed out as previously. We've added in a second question here, has the project been evaluated in the last 3 years? Of course, if your project only started this year, it's going to say no, but if you've been running for 5 or 6 years, we'd expect an answer, has it been evaluated? And via the ANCP manual, it states that you need to evaluate every 3 years. So if we've been running for 5 years, we'd want to have a yes in there. Okay, otherwise Mighty would be giving you a call.
It is a requirement of your contract that you're evaluating multi-year projects every 3 years, and that's been in there for quite some time in your contracts. It's been there for a number of years already.
All right. And don't forget, write as many questions as you like because we're coming back to them in a moment. Evaluation fields, the same as what they have previous years. No changes there, just what is the evaluation I'm going to have. Okay, indicators. This is the bit that dropped out of the header. What we've done here is listed all of them. Okay, quite often someone will say, hey, well, I didn't hit that header indicator, but I used to hit that other one, but there's no room for me to write it. So what we've done now is list all 80 indicators that you have a choice of in the performance report. And we've just done that. We've listed that with the technical notes above that exist in the performance report. So exactly the same, with the same tick boxes. So if we're doing number of water points built or upgraded, I'll tick that, my wash, etc. You can scroll down, very long list. Got our education, just for a while. Economic development, governance, humanitarian and disaster response, ANCP, involvement in the Australian community, and aid for trade, right down the bottom. Okay, same indicators, no changes here. All you need to do is indicate what you expect to report against. But of course, if your project changes, when you get the performance report, we're not going to run you over a barrel about, hey, you ticked 2.701 and you didn't report against it. This is just to give us an idea of what to expect. But of course, things change throughout the year, as we know. Okay, once you've gone down and ticked out what you expect to report against, you just go next. And this is the other information that Mighty was talking about. Put in information here that you haven't captured. For example, our asset register. If your project, we were talking about assets earlier, if it expect to hand over a whole bunch of assets at the end of the time to the local community after the project finishes, just attach it on here. Give us a bit of a feel of what it's going to be, or any other information that you haven't been able to provide. You can just write it in this section.
Yeah.
All right.
Just a great spot for all of those questions that have a short word limit. If you need to add additional information, here's your chance.
Yep, and you can also add other documents, any supporting documentation you require, you can add it on here. Okay, and the last page, certification. Pretty much says, make sure all your projects are finished and make sure your header is certified before you start submitting your projects. Okay, so we're going to go flick back to our, so we can view the questions from you guys. And you're most welcome to type any questions on the ADPlan project. I'm just going to scroll up here.
Bug in the header.
Header. Okay. Contact details. There's a title drop down.
There we go, Glenn. That is a bug for you to fix.
That's excellent, Anna. Anne, sorry, not Anna. Anne, thank you. I'll make note of that.
Thanks, Kayleen, and about your question about do projects have to wait for approval? Can continuing multi-year projects have to wait to receive approval to continue, or can they commence on the 1st of July? And I know we had this discussion on the phone the other day, and I've been meaning to come back to you on that. Look, and I guess the response here is that in the manual we do state that project activities shouldn't be retrospectively funded with ANCP funding. So I guess here the advice is really to, you will be familiar with your projects and what risks your projects face and the complexity your projects face. And it's probably going to be a risk-based approach on your part. If you are, you will know how much change those projects you're talking about may or may not have been party to, and you will know what your resourcing is like, so that if post submission of the ADPlan, if you think there's a possibility that that project may not be approved because of risk or contention, or in there, do you have other funding sources that you are able to put towards that project, or for the 4 to 6 weeks that it'll take us, hopefully, to work through the approval process? Do you have alternate ways of being able to fund that, should it be the case that that project isn't approved for continuing funds? So there, I think it's probably a case of using your best judgment and taking a risk-based approach. I hope that answers your question, but I'm happy to talk with you more, Kayleen, about that specifically.
Jeremy asks, can ANCP funds be subcontracted to for-profit enterprises?
That is a really interesting question, Jeremy, and I will have to take that on notice in terms of implementing in-country partners. I don't know if we've had a look at private sector enterprises as implementing in-country partners. I'm not quite sure if I can't think of any examples off the top of my head where it's being done at the moment. So it's an interesting question, and I'll have to take that on notice and come back to you if that's okay. And then on the contact, Jeremy's also asking if there's any DFAT criteria for differentiating between social enterprises and for-profit organisations. Again, I'm going to have to take that on notice and actually go back and read in detail some of our private sector policy to see if it provides us some specific examples there.
They're excellent questions, Jeremy.
Yeah, so I will take those questions on notice and come back to you. Steph, just noting. Maximum grant. Okay, so in terms of the funding policy and asking question around maximum grant increase, decrease over the next 3 years will be universal. Okay, so and if you haven't had an opportunity to read the ANCP funding policy that was distributed on the 8th of April, then please let me know and I can email you out another copy that was distributed. No, it's not universal. So the funding policy really just reconfirms DFAT's commitment to assigning ANCP grant amounts based on each full-tier NGO's recognised development expenditure amounts. So in doing the financial modelling that underpinned the new funding policy, we did note that some NGOs are receiving a larger amount than they proportionately maybe should be compared to their RDE, and some NGOs were receiving less funding than proportionate to their RDE amount. So we are just looking at those increases and decreases in grant amounts over the coming years to bring all NGO grant amounts back in line with their RDE figures. I'm happy to talk you through the details of that, and if it's not clear after reading the funding policy. So Colin, yeah, that's true. The funding, what the process will be for approving your ad plans is they'll be submitted on the 30th of June, and then as we mentioned before, we will have to liaise with our posts and some thematic areas, for example, you know, our family planning, health team in the health section and so forth, about all new projects. And once we've been able to approve all of your ad plans, we'll advise you that you're then welcome to submit your invoice to DFAT for the payment for your first tranche payment. Following that, so then, you know, normal government procedure is that invoices are paid within 30 days of receipt of a correctly rendered invoice. So we may contact you in August and say, yes, it's fine to submit your invoice, and then it may actually be late August or September by the time that money lands in your bank account. So in the ANCP manual at the moment, it does specify that your ANCP grant shouldn't be used to retrospectively fund activities that have already been delivered. And so again, for you, same, I guess it's the same advice as I provided to Kayleen earlier. You should make your own risk assessment on whether or not you think particular projects are going to be contentious, or, you know, whether you think there's a risk that they may or may not be approved by DFAT for ANCP funding, and then determine that if it was the case that that project wasn't able to be supported with your ANCP grant, would you be able to cover the costs that you expended while waiting for our approval via another source? So Colin, maybe I'm happy to have a chat offline about those projects that you are looking to submit, and that might help you make that risk assessment on those projects.
Is there any other questions?
So Jeremy, I'll come back to you on those other questions that we've taken on notice. We've made note of those questions. I'll come back to you directly. And it looks like we've hit everyone else's questions. We're really conscious that we've come to 11:30 and we've gone way over the time that we promised it would take to go through everything. So we might leave you all to your mornings,
Mighty will just repeat the contact details. So if you've got any other questions you think of this afternoon, contact us on.
Absolutely. So the ANCP hotline, we will always answer the phone during business hours, Australian Eastern Standard Time business hours. And that number is 02 6178 5888. Helen and Kate are there waiting to take your calls anytime. And of course, we've got the ANCP mailbox that we monitor, every day during business hours, which is ancp@dfat.gov.au. Thank you so much for jumping online and joining us today. Thank you so much to Steph at ACFID and all the team at ACFID for hosting these webinars. It's a great way to reach you guys when we can't see you face to face.
All right, thank you very much, and hopefully we'll talk to you real soon.
And if I can just
Bye, guys.
can you hear me? Hi, can people hear me now? We'll just close off the webinar. Thanks very much to Mighty and Glenn. And there's more ANC webinars coming up over coming months. When I close off this webinar, remember to do the Survey Monkey, and see you all again via webinars at some time in the future. Thanks, everyone.